Axle. Introduction. We have learned the engine family and transmission family in our previous modules. Now we are going to learn about axles in automobile. Rear axle is the last but important member of automobile powertrain. Objective. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to describe live axle and dead axle. Recognize the components of an axle. Identify the various types and its benefits. We are familiar with the term axle while learning the basics of Automobile Part 1 and working principle of rear axle, banjo type and Salisbury axle. Axle and types. Axle is the important part of powertrain. Axle transmits the drive torque to the wheels. Axle carries vehicle weight and payload. Function of an axle. To transmit engine power to wheels. To support vehicle in stationary and running condition. To provide perfect rolling motion to the wheels at all times. It supports brake system, steering system and suspension. Construction of an axle. It consists of two half shafts connected to the differential gear. One shaft for one wheel. Each half shaft is connected to the sun gear of the differential and the other end is connected to the wheel. The wheel axle and differential gears are completely enclosed in a housing which protects them from water, dust and external damages. Types of axle. There are two types of axles, live axle and dead axle. In most of the automobiles, rear axle is the driving axle. It lies between the driving wheel and transmits power from the differential to the driving wheels. Live axle. The live axle is also called as independent axle. It consists of two main components, axle shaft enclosed in axle casing and differential assembly. Live axles are used to transmit power from gearbox to front wheels. In two-wheel drive Mahindra vehicles, powertrain layout is majorly front engine rear wheel drive. That is, rear axle is live axle. While in four-wheel drive vehicles, both front and rear axles are live axles. Dead axle. The dead axle is also called as solid axle and has sufficient rigidity and strength to take the vehicle load. Dead axle consists of two main components, open end yoke and tube assembly. There is no connection with the engine and having no differential mechanism. these axles do not rotate with the engine like live axle. Many commercial trucks and truck tractors have dead axles on the front, whereas practically all passenger vehicles use independent front wheel suspensions and have no front axles. Live axles are mostly placed in rear end of the vehicle, or some of the four-wheel drive vehicles will have both front and rear axles as live axles. Dead axle can be placed in front or rear, depending on front wheel drive or rear wheel drive type of vehicle. Some of the examples are Scorpio, Bolero Camper, Neo Sport, Imperio, Xylo, Bolero Pickup, TUV 300, Bolero, Thar Di, Supro and Altura. Scorpio, Thar CRD, Bolero Pickup, XUV 500 and Altura. Bolero, Thar Di, Bolero Camper and Bolero Pickup. KUV 100, Verito, XUV 500 and Marazzo. Banjo and Salisbury types of axles. Although all rear axles perform the same basic functions, the designs of the rear axles may vary. There are two basic rear axle carrier housing assembly designs that are used in Mahindras: Banjo type and Salisbury type. The Banjo type has a removable carrier that supports the drive pinion and ring gear, that is differential case assemblies. The Banjo axle housing has integral axle tubes. The Salisbury type is the most commonly used rear axle carrier housing assembly. The carrier housing contains the rear axle components and has axle tubes welded to it. Salisbury axles are rigid in construction, less noisy and difficult to repair or service, whereas Banjo axles are less rigid, more noisy and easy to repair or service. Some of the examples of Banjo and Salisbury are Scorpio, TUV 300, Xylo, Imperio, Jito and Neo Sport. Bolero, Bolero Camper, Bolero Pickup, Thar Di and Scorpio. Banjo axles are semi-float axles, whereas Salisbury axles are full float or semi-float. Semi-floating axle. In semi-floating axle, a single bearing supports the outer end of the shaft and is located just inside the housing ends. The weight of the vehicle is transmitted first to the suspension spring, then to the axle casing, then to the axle and finally to the ground. The semi-floating axle is used in passenger vehicle and in light trucks. Full floating axle. In full floating axle, the drive wheel is carried on the outer end of the axle housing by a pair of tapered roller bearings. The bearings are located outside the axle housing. The weight of the vehicle and payload is supported by the spindle on the housing and not the axle shaft. the shaft is only subjected to twisting forces, that is torque, from the engine. The axle shaft is connected to the drive wheel through the bolted flange. This allows the axle shaft to be removed for servicing without removing the wheel. This type of axle is very strong and therefore it is used for heavy-duty vehicles. Let us see the difference between semi-floating and full-floating axle. Difference: the semi-floating axle has only one bearing on either side, while the full-floating axle has two bearings on either sides. Axle shaft carries weight and transmits torque in semi-floating axles, whereas in full-floating axle shaft transmits only the torque. In semi-floating axle, wheel hub is directly connected to axle shaft, whereas in full-floating axle, wheel hub is supported by bearings. Axle shaft cannot be removed without jacking up the vehicle or disturbing the wheel bearing setting in semi-floating axle, whereas in full-floating axle shaft can be removed easily without jacking up the vehicle and without disturbing the wheel bearing setting. Semi-floating axles usually being smaller and less expensive, whereas full-floating axles are expensive. The overall assembly of semi-floating axle is simple in construction, whereas full-floating axles are complex in construction. In short, axle terminologies. In previous modules, we have seen these terms: front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, four-wheel drive, and all-wheel drive. Let us quickly revisit them. In front wheel drive vehicles, front wheels are the driving wheels. Its compact setup enhances fuel efficiency and allows more interior room. In rear wheel drive vehicle, rear wheels are the driving wheels. It can more effectively handle higher engine power and higher vehicle weight. Four-wheel drive is found in large trucks and SUVs and provide the best traction in off-road conditions. All-wheel drive is ideal for the buyers who wants additional traction delivered by both axles, like on wet pavement, ice and snow. Modern front-wheel drive cars typically combines the transmission, that is gearbox and differential, and front axle into a single unit called transaxle. Now, let us see the terms front axle and rear axle. Front axle. Front axle carries weight of the front part of automobiles and absorbs shocks due to road surface variation. Types of front axle: live front axle, dead front axle, and stub front axle. Live front axle. Live front axles are used to transmit power from gearbox to front wheels. Dead front axle. Dead front axles have sufficient rigidity and strength to take the vehicle load. There is no connection with the engine and having no differential mechanism. These axles do not rotate with the engine like live front axles. Stub front axle. Stub front axle is provided in the ends of the axle beam of front axle. This axle is capable of angular movement about the kingpin for steering the vehicle. Rear axle. The primary function of the rear axle is to transfer engine torque, that is rotating force, from the propeller shaft to the rear wheels. Since the rotation of the vehicle wheels is perpendicular to the rotation of the propeller shaft, the rear axle is designed to provide a 90-degree change in rotation. The rear axle is also designed to split the engine torque between two wheels. These functions are accomplished by the rear axle gear sets. Rear axle transmits power from differential to the wheels, which helps to rotate both the wheels at different speed while cornering. In this section, we have seen that axle transmits the drive torque to the wheels. Live and dead axles are two main types of axles. Salisbury axles are difficult to repair, whereas banjo axles are easy to repair. Semi-floating axle has only one bearing, while full-floating has two bearings. Front axle carries weight and absorbs shocks due to road surface variation. Rear axle is used to transfer engine torque from propeller shaft to the rear wheels. Wheel bearings. Wheel hub bearings are ball bearing or roller bearing assemblies that reduces the friction and support the wheels and axles as they rotate. Types of wheel bearings. Taper roller bearing, unitized taper roller bearing, deep groove ball bearing, double row angular contact ball bearing, double row unitized taper roller bearing, Gen 2 or 3 unitized bearing, preloading and greasing. Preloading and greasing is required in taper roller bearings, whereas preloading and greasing is not required in unitized taper roller bearing, deep groove ball bearing, double row angular contact ball bearing, double row unitized taper roller bearing, and Gen 2 or 3 unitized bearing. These bearings are used in front and rear wheel ends in these Mahindra vehicles. Taper roller bearings are used in front in Bolero pickup 4-wheel drive, Thar DI, Thar CRDE, Scorpio 4-wheel drive, and used on rear in Bolero, BMT Plus, Thar DI, Bolero pickup below 1.3 tons, and Bolero Power Plus. Unitized taper roller bearings are used on rear in Scorpio CRDE. Deep groove ball bearings are used on rear in Thar CRDE, TUV 300, Xylo, Scorpio SLX, VLX, SLE, Neosport, Maximo and Maximo MPV. Double row angular contact ball bearings are used on front in KUV 100, Verito, Jito, Maximo, Supro, Supro MPV, and on rear in new generation Scorpio and Jito. Double row unitized taper roller bearings are used on front in Xylo, Conto, Bolero Pickup Extra Long, Bolero Power Plus, Bolero, BMT Plus, Scorpio 2-wheel drive, Bolero Pickup 2-wheel drive, and on rear in Bolero Extra Long, Imperio, and Bolero Pickup 1.3 ton and above. Gen 2 or 3 unitized bearings are used on front in new generation Scorpio, TUV300, Xylo, Neo Sports, Imperio, XUV 500, and on rear in KUV 100 and XUV 500. In this section, we have seen that wheel hub bearing reduces the friction and support the wheels and axles. Bearings are used at front and rear wheel ends. Preloading and greasing is required only for taper roller bearing. Wheel hub greasing. Most bearings that are initially packed with grease require periodic re-lubrication to operate efficiently. Grease should be packed into the bearing so that it gets between the rolling elements, that is, the rollers or balls. Greasing requirement. To minimize friction between the rolling elements. Protect from corrosion and contaminant in grease. To transfer heat. We in Mahindra use Maximil LCG 3 grease, where LCG means lithium complex grease. Qualities of this grease are EP, that is extreme pressure additives, water resistant, heat, that is temperature resistant, heavy duty, longer life. The fiber structure of normal and complex grease is as shown below. We in Mahindras use lithium complex grease because it is thicker, longer, and it has interconnected fiber structure. Hub greasing process. Wheel hub greasing involves carefully packing grease within each roller of the bearing with correct amount of grease. Hub greasing is a skilled job which requires a trained technician and special tools. For taper roller bearings, forcing grease through the bearing from the large end to the small end will ensure proper distribution. In this section, we have seen that greasing is required to minimize friction between the rolling elements. Mahindra uses Maximil LCG 3 grease. Hub greasing is a skilled job which requires a trained technician and special tools. This lesson is now finished. Now it's time to test your knowledge on the elements of this lesson.